The shotgun blast echoed through the mountain darkness, and Evelyn Hart didn't flinch. While smoke curled from the barrel and blood pooled at her feet, she finally understood what survival really meant. Not running, not hiding, standing your ground when the world burns around you. This is the story of 4 sisters who lied their way into hell, and one woman who refused to break, even when breaking seemed like mercy. Stay until the end to see how far fear can push you before it turns into something sharper. Drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button. Let's begin. The wind bit hard at 3,000 feet. Silas Vance stood on the northern ridge of his property, watching the supply wagon climb the final switchback toward his cabin. February ice glazed the rocks. The horses struggled, breath steaming, hooves slipping on frozen mud. Behind him, the Iron Spine Mountains rose like broken teeth against a colorless sky. "They're here," Boone called from the porch, his voice carrying across the clearing. Silas didn't turn. "I see them. You having second thoughts?" Too late for that. It had been Ryder's idea originally, ordering brides from back east. Practical, he'd said. The mountains didn't care about romance. Up here, you needed someone who could work, who could endure the isolation, who wouldn't crack when winter came and didn't leave for 5 months straight. Someone who understood that survival mattered more than sentiment. They'd placed the advertisement in November. 4 brothers, property owners, seeking companionship. No promises beyond honesty and provision. The responses came slower than expected. Most women took one look at the Iron Spine Range on a map and decided against it. But 4 letters arrived in January, all bearing the same return address in Philadelphia. 4 sisters. It seemed too convenient, too neat. Silas had argued against it. Families brought complications, loyalties that could fracture under pressure. But Elias, the youngest, had pointed out that sisters would be less likely to flee. They'd have each other, built-in companionship to soften the isolation. Against his better judgment, Silas had agreed. Now the wagon crested the ridge, and he could see them. 4 women bundled in traveling cloaks, faces obscured by scarves and frost. The driver looked exhausted, shoulders slumped. He'd probably taken twice as long as usual, nursing the wagon over terrain that could snap an axle if you hit the wrong rock. Ryder emerged from the barn, wiping his hands on his pants. "Well, hell, they actually came." "Don't sound so surprised," Boone said. "We paid their passage. Paying for something and getting it are different things up here." Silas descended from the ridge, boots crunching through snow. His brothers fell in behind him without discussion. They'd learned young how to present a united front. Their father had beaten that lesson into them before the consumption took him 6 years back. The wagon rolled to a stop near the main cabin. The driver set the brake and climbed down stiffly, not meeting anyone's eyes. "Vance brothers?" he asked. "That's us," Silas said. "Got your delivery." The man jerked his thumb toward the wagon bed. "Though I'll be damned if I understand why anyone would come up here willingly." One of the women stood. She was tall, broad-shouldered, and when she pulled the scarf away from her face, Silas saw dark eyes that assessed him with the same wariness he felt. "Evelyn Hart," she said. Her voice was steady, lower than he'd expected. "These are my sisters, Clara, Margaret, and Anne." The other 3 stood as well. Clara was slender, pale, with nervous hands that kept adjusting her cloak. Margaret looked younger, maybe 19, with red hair escaping from beneath her hood. Anne was the smallest, but something in her posture suggested she could handle herself. Silas studied Evelyn. The letters had included descriptions, but they'd been vague. He wasn't sure what he'd expected. Someone smaller, maybe. More delicate. The kind of woman who'd need protecting. Evelyn Hart didn't look like she needed protecting. She was solidly built, curves that spoke of strength rather than fragility. Her jaw was set, her gaze direct. When she climbed down from the wagon, she moved with deliberate care, testing her weight before committing. Smart. The ice was treacherous. "I'm Silas," he said finally. "This is Boone, Ryder, and Elias." His brothers offered nods. Elias smiled, trying to lighten the moment. It didn't quite work. "Long trip?" Boone asked. 3 weeks, Clara said. Her voice shook slightly. "The last week was difficult." "Mountains don't make it easy," Ryder said. "You get used to it." Evelyn's expression suggested she doubted that, but she didn't argue. Instead, she turned to the wagon and began pulling down luggage. 2 trunks, 4 traveling bags. Not much for 4 women starting a new life. Silas moved to help. His hand brushed Evelyn's on the same trunk handle, and for a moment they both paused. "I can manage," she said. "Didn't say you couldn't." She held his gaze for 3 seconds before releasing the handle. Silas lifted the trunk, heavier than it looked, and carried it toward the cabin. Behind him, he heard his brothers sorting out the rest of the luggage, heard the murmur of introductions and awkward pleasantries. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of snow. Another storm coming. They had maybe 6 hours. Inside the cabin, Silas set the trunk down near the main room's fireplace. The space was clean, functional. 2 bedrooms branched off the main area, plus a loft accessible by ladder. They'd prepared as best they could. Fresh linen, stocked pantry, firewood cut and stacked. The door opened. Evelyn entered first, scanning the room with the same methodical attention she'd given everything else. Her sisters followed, clustered close like birds sheltering from a hawk. "It's warm," Margaret said, surprise evident in her tone. "We keep it that way," Elias said from the doorway. "Fire goes out up here, you can freeze in your sleep." Anne moved to the window, looking out at the mountains. "How far to the nearest town?" 16 miles, Silas said. 3 hours in good weather, 8 in bad. "And how often is the weather bad?" "October through April, most of the time." Clara's face paled. "We didn't realize it would be so isolated." "The letters mentioned it," Boone pointed out. "Mentioning and experiencing are different things." Evelyn cut through the tension. "We're here now. Might as well make the best of it." She crossed to the fireplace, holding her hands toward the flames. Her sisters gravitated toward her like she was a second source of heat. It was subtle, but Silas noticed. The way they looked to her before speaking, the way they positioned themselves slightly behind her. She was the leader. That could be useful or problematic, depending on how it played out. "You must be hungry," Elias said. "We've got stew on. Nothing fancy, but it'll fill you up." "That sounds wonderful," Evelyn said. "Thank you." The meal was awkward. 8 people around a table built for 4, elbows bumping, conversation stilted. Clara barely ate. Margaret asked too many questions about things that didn't matter. Anne remained silent, watching everything with dark, calculating eyes. Evelyn ate steadily, efficiently. No wasted motion. When Ryder offered her more bread, she accepted without false modesty. "So," Boone said eventually, "we should probably discuss arrangements." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Arrangements," Evelyn repeated. "Sleeping quarters, division of labor, that sort of thing. We figured the 4 of you could take the 2 bedrooms. We'll bunk in the loft and the barn until we sort out something more permanent." "That's generous," Evelyn said carefully. "It's practical. You need privacy, time to settle in. We're not animals." Silas caught the flicker of relief on Clara's face. Whatever they'd been expecting, it hadn't been courtesy. "In terms of work," Ryder continued, "we run cattle and horses, do some trapping in winter. There's a garden plot that needs tending come spring. Cooking, mending, basic maintenance. We can split all that however makes sense." "We can handle it," Evelyn said. "Didn't say you couldn't." The echo of their earlier exchange hung in the air. Evelyn's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. After dinner, the sisters excused themselves to unpack. Silas watched them disappear into the bedrooms, then turned to his brothers. "Well?" Boone asked quietly. "Well, what?" "You're the one who had reservations. Still worried?" Silas considered. "Something's off." "Off how?" "I don't know yet, but they're scared. All of them, even the one pretending she's not." "A lot of women would be scared coming to a place like this," Elias pointed out. "This is different." Silas moved to the window, watching snow begin to fall. "They're not scared of the mountains. They're scared of something else." Ryder joined him. "You think they're running from something?" "Maybe." "We should ask." "We will, but not tonight. Let them settle first." In the smaller bedroom, Evelyn helped Clara unpack, while Margaret and Anne whispered in the corner. "It's not what I expected," Clara said softly. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Something harsher. They seemed almost kind." "Don't confuse practicality with kindness," Evelyn said, but she kept her voice gentle. Clara bruised easily. Margaret appeared at her elbow. "How long do you think we have?" "Before what?" Before they figure it out, before Hale's men find us. Evelyn's hands stilled on the trunk. Long enough? You don't know that. I know we're further away than we've ever been. I know we used false names on the passenger lists. I know Hale doesn't have connections this far west. She closed the trunk firmly. I know we're safer here than we were in Philadelphia. But not safe, Anne said from the corner. No, not safe. Clara's eyes filled with tears. Maybe we should tell them. About father, about the debt, about… No. Evelyn's voice hardened. We tell them nothing. They took us in good faith. We keep our problems to ourselves. But if Hale's men come, then we'll handle it. How? Evelyn didn't answer. She couldn't, because she didn't have an answer. All she had was determination and the knife hidden in her boot and the desperate hope that 3,000 feet of mountain would be enough to bury their past. Outside, the snow fell heavier. The wind howled through the pines, carrying the promise of a long, bitter night. Silas lay in the loft, listening to the storm and the sounds of 8 people learning to share space. Boone snored lightly. Ryder muttered in his sleep. Elias was probably still awake, staring at the ceiling like he did most nights. In the bedroom below, someone was crying. Quiet, muffled sobs that tried hard not to be heard. Silas stared into the darkness and wondered what the hell he'd brought into his home. Morning came gray and cold. The storm had dropped 8 inches of fresh snow, blanketing everything in pristine white that would turn to ice by afternoon. Evelyn woke before dawn, extracted herself from the bed she shared with Clara without waking her sister, and dressed quickly in the cold. Her breath misted in the air. The cabin's main room was warmer, fire already crackling. Silas stood at the stove, cooking something that smelled like salt pork and beans. You're up early, he said without turning. Habit. Evelyn moved to the window, looking out at the transformed landscape. It's beautiful. It's deadly. Pretty things usually are. She glanced at him. In the dim light, his profile was all hard angles. Strong jaw, sharp nose, the kind of face that didn't give much away. He was tall, lean muscle rather than bulk, with hands that looked like they knew work. How long have you been here? She asked. All my life. Father homesteaded this land 30 years back. Built the original cabin with his own hands. He's gone now? 6 years. Consumption took him slow. I'm sorry, Silas shrugged. He was a hard man. Not much to miss, if I'm honest. The casual brutality of the statement caught her off guard. Most men prettied up their fathers after death, gilded the memory until it shone. That's honest, she said. You wanted something else? No, honest is refreshing. He plated food and handed her a bowl. Their fingers brushed again, and again Evelyn noted the calluses, the old scars, hands that had seen violence. Your sister's still sleeping, he asked. Clara and Margaret are. Anne's a light sleeper. She's probably listening to this conversation. As if summoned, Anne appeared in the doorway. She'd braided her dark hair back, revealing a face that was all sharp edges and suspicious eyes. Morning, Silas said. Anne nodded but didn't speak. She took the bowl he offered and sat as far from him as the space allowed. Over the next hour, the rest of the household stirred to life. Boone emerged from the barn covered in snow, complaining about a horse that kicked. Ryder and Elias descended from the loft, still half asleep. Margaret came out timidly, accepted food with a whispered thank you. Clara was last, looking pale and fragile in the morning light. We need to discuss expectations, Silas said once everyone had eaten. Not rules, I'm not your father, but we need to understand how this works. Go on, Evelyn said. First, safety. You don't go out alone, not until you know the land. It's easy to get turned around in these mountains, and easy to die if you do. Second, food. We share equally, but we also work equally. Third, honesty. You have a problem, you speak up. Don't let things fester. He looked directly at Evelyn when he said that last part. That seems reasonable, she said. Good. Now who knows how to shoot? Silence. That's what I figured. We'll fix that today. Up here, everyone needs to know how to handle a gun. Clara's face went white. I don't think I could. You could if you had to, Silas interrupted. That's the whole point. After breakfast, they trudged through snow to a clearing behind the barn. Silas set up targets, old bottles and cans lined on a fallen log. Boone brought out rifles, showed them how to load, how to sight, how to breathe. Margaret took to it immediately, her hands steady, her aim true. Anne was cautious but focused. Clara shook so badly she couldn't hit anything. Evelyn was different. She listened to every instruction, asked clarifying questions, adjusted her stance when Silas corrected her. When she fired, the rifle kicked hard into her shoulder. She'd have a bruise tomorrow, but she didn't flinch. The bottle exploded. Again, Silas said. She fired. Another bottle shattered. You've done this before, he said. My father taught us. Before he... She stopped. Before he died. When? 2 months ago. The admission hung between them. Silas studied her face, looking for the lie, but found only grief. I'm sorry for your loss, he said finally. Are you? I know what it's like to lose a father. Even a bad one leaves a hole. Evelyn lowered the rifle. He wasn't bad. He was weak. That's worse. Before Silas could respond, Margaret called out. Riders coming. Everyone turned. 2 horses emerged from the tree line, moving fast. As they got closer, Silas recognized Jake Morrison and his son Peter, ranchers from the neighboring valley. Stay here, he told the women. To his brothers, with me. The Vance brothers met Morrison halfway. The older man pulled up hard, his horse dancing sideways. Silas, Morrison said. His face was grim. We've got trouble. What kind? 3 men came through town yesterday, asking questions. Eastern accents, expensive clothes. They were looking for 4 women traveling west. Sisters, they said. Evelyn's blood turned to ice. Behind her, Clara made a small sound of terror. What kind of questions? Silas asked, his voice carefully neutral. Names, descriptions, whether anyone had seen them. They showed money, promised more for information. Morrison's gaze drifted to the women. I told them I hadn't seen anyone matching that description, but Tom Weller at the general store, he might have said something. He was real interested in that reward money. They say why they were looking? Claimed the women were runaways. Said their father died owing debts, and they fled before settling accounts. Morrison shifted uncomfortably in his saddle. Said they're dangerous, thieves. Silas turned slowly. His eyes found Evelyn across the clearing. She stood frozen, rifle still in her hands, her face drained of color. That true? He called. Every eye turned to her. Clara was crying again. Margaret had gone pale. Anne looked ready to run. Evelyn's throat worked. For a moment she couldn't speak. Then quietly, It's complicated. Uncomplicate it. The rifle felt heavy in her hands. She could run, grab her sisters, and disappear into the mountains. They'd die out there, probably freeze before nightfall, but at least Hale's men wouldn't find them. Or she could tell the truth and hope these men were different from every other man she'd known. She set the rifle down carefully. My father owned a textile business in Philadelphia, she said. Her voice carried across the clearing, steady despite her terror. He borrowed money from the wrong people to keep it afloat. When he died, the debt passed to us, $20,000. Boone whistled low. That's a hell of a debt. The man he owed it to, Victor Hale, he's not the kind who accepts payment plans. He owns half the city, judges and police included. When we couldn't pay, he claimed us as collateral. She forced the word out. We were supposed to work in his establishments until the debt was settled. We would have died there. So you ran, Silas said. We ran. Morrison shifted in his saddle. Those men asking questions? They work for this Hale? Probably. And if they find you? Evelyn lifted her chin. Then we'll deal with it. We? Silas's voice was flat, dangerous. You lied to us. Used us as cover. Brought your trouble to our door without warning. Yes. That's all you have to say? Yes? What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? I'm not. I'd do it again. I'd do anything to keep my sisters safe. Her hands clenched into fists. We're not thieves. We're not criminals. We're just women trying to survive in a world that treats us like property. If that makes us dangerous, fine. We're dangerous. The silence stretched. Snow fell softly, muffling everything. Finally, Morrison spoke. Well, Silas, what are you going to do? Silas looked at Evelyn. Really looked at her. The set of her shoulders, the defiance in her eyes, the way she'd positioned herself between her sisters and everyone else. Protective, fierce. dangerous. He'd seen men like her before, men who'd been pushed until they had nothing left to lose, who decided that survival mattered more than rules or propriety or what people thought. They were the most dangerous kind. They were also the kind who didn't break. Nothing, he said. Morrison blinked. Nothing? They came here in good faith. I accepted them in good faith. That contract doesn't change because of what they're running from. Silas, if those men come here, then they'll leave disappointed. He turned to Morrison. You didn't see them? Nobody did. As far as anyone knows, we're still bachelor brothers living alone on this mountain. You're making a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Morrison shook his head. You always were stubborn, just like your father. Careful, Jake, that's not a compliment. The older man gathered his reins. I'll spread the word. Anyone asks, I didn't see anything. But Silas, you need to understand what you're up against. Victor Hale isn't some small-time debt collector. He has reach, money, connections. He won't stop looking. Then he'll keep looking. He won't find them here. Morrison rode off, his son following silently. The Vance brothers and the Hart sisters stood in the clearing, snow accumulating on their shoulders, the future suddenly uncertain and jagged with danger. Evelyn found her voice first. Why? Silas turned to her. Why what? Why help us? You don't know us. We lied to you. We put you in danger. Why not just send us away? He considered the question. In the gray morning light, with snow falling and the mountains looming around them, the answer seemed obvious. Because running doesn't work, he said. You run, they chase, you hide, they search. Eventually they find you. The only way to win is to stop running. We can't fight him. He's too powerful. Maybe. But up here, power looks different. Money and connections don't mean much when you're 3,000 feet up a mountain in winter. He gestured to the landscape. These mountains don't care who you are or what you own. They only care if you're strong enough to survive them. And you think we are. I think you made it this far. That counts for something. Clara stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Thank you so much. We'll work hard. We'll earn our keep. We'll survive, Evelyn cut in. Her voice was firm again, the momentary vulnerability gone. That's all. We'll survive, and we won't bring our trouble down on you if we can help it. Too late for that, Ryder said, but he was smiling slightly. Trouble's already here. Might as well make use of it. Make use of it how? Anne asked. You want to stop running? Then learn to stand and fight, really fight, not just shoot bottles. Ryder picked up the rifle Evelyn had set down. By the time spring comes, you'll be able to protect yourself. All of you. Margaret's eyes widened. You're going to train us? Someone has to. Might as well be us. Boone clapped Ryder on the shoulder. Look at you, going soft in your old age. Not soft. Practical. They're here now. They're targets. That makes this place a target too. We might as well make sure everyone knows how to defend it. Elias had been quiet throughout the exchange, but now he spoke up. For what it's worth, I think we're doing the right thing. Nobody asked you, Silas said, but there was no heat in it. They trudged back to the cabin together, a strange new unit formed from necessity and fear, and something that might eventually become trust. Inside, Evelyn helped her sisters clean up, while the brothers discussed watch rotations and defensive positions in low voices. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Silas found Evelyn sitting by the dying fire. She'd wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, but she was still shivering. Can't sleep? He asked. No. He added wood to the fire, watched sparks rise toward the ceiling. You should try. Tomorrow's going to be hard. Tomorrow's always hard. Fair point. He sat across from her, the fire between them. You want to talk about it? About what? Whatever's keeping you awake. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. Then, I keep thinking about my father, the last thing he said to me before he died. What was it? Take care of them. That's all. Just take care of them. She laughed bitterly. He couldn't do it himself, so he put it on me. Everything. Their safety, their future, their lives, all of it on my shoulders. That's a heavy burden. Yes. You carry it well. She looked up sharply. You don't know that. I can see it. The way they look at you, depend on you. You've been carrying them for a while now. Since Mother died, I was 12. Silas whistled low. That's young. Not up here, I'd imagine. You probably started working before you could walk. Pretty much. But that's different. Boys are expected to work. Girls are expected to... He trailed off. To what? Be pretty? Be quiet? Wait for a man to take care of us? Evelyn's voice was sharp. I stopped waiting a long time ago. I noticed. They sat in silence, watching the fire dance. Outside, the wind had picked up again. Another storm rolling in, or maybe just the mountain breathing. Can I ask you something? Evelyn said eventually. Go ahead. Why did you really agree to this? The bride thing, I mean. You don't seem like the type who needs companionship. Silas considered his answer carefully. I'm not. But Elias is lonely, and Ryder's getting bitter, and Boone needs someone to soften him before he turns into our father. He poked at the fire. I figured if I didn't agree, they'd do it anyway, probably make bad choices. At least this way I could, I don't know, have some say in it. Control. Yes. And now you've got 4 women who lied to you and brought danger to your door. How's that control working out? He smiled despite himself. Not great. Sorry. Don't be. I'm starting to think control's overrated anyway. Evelyn pulled the blanket tighter. Those men Morrison mentioned, they won't give up. Hale pays well, and he doesn't tolerate failure. They'll keep searching. Let them search. You say that now, but when they come, when guns start going off and people start dying, you might regret it. Maybe. Silas met her eyes across the fire. But I've lived my whole life up here, doing what needed doing, making the hard choices. I'm not going to start running now just because things got complicated. We're more than complicated. We're a disaster waiting to happen. Most worthwhile things are. Something in his tone made her pause. She studied his face in the firelight, looking for mockery or false comfort, but found only steady certainty. You barely know us, she said quietly. True. We could be exactly what those men said. Thieves, liars, criminals. Are you? We lied about why we came here. That makes us liars. Lying to survive isn't the same as lying for profit. There's a difference. Evelyn felt something tight in her chest loosen slightly. Most people don't see it that way. I'm not most people. No, you're really not. The fire crackled. Snow pelted the windows. Somewhere in the darkness, an animal cried out, hunger or pain, impossible to tell which. I should sleep, Evelyn said, though she didn't move. Probably. Will you keep watch? Someone always does. She stood, blanket wrapped around her like armor. At the doorway to the bedroom, she paused. Silas? Yeah? Thank you. For not sending us away, for giving us a chance. Don't thank me yet. We don't know how this ends. No. But at least we're not alone anymore. She disappeared into the darkness of the bedroom. Silas sat alone by the fire, listening to the storm and thinking about choices and consequences and women who carried the weight of the world on their shoulders. He'd meant what he said. Control was overrated. But protection, survival, making sure the people under your roof stayed alive, that mattered. That was worth fighting for. Even if it meant going to war with a man who owned half of Philadelphia. The fire burned lower. Silas added more wood, settled in for a long night of watching and waiting. Outside, the mountains stood silent, indifferent to human drama. They'd been here long before Victor Hale. They'd be here long after. And somewhere in that eternal patience, Silas found comfort. The mountains didn't care about power or money or who thought they owned what. They only cared about strength, the kind that endured when everything else fell away. Evelyn Hart had that strength. He'd seen it in her eyes, in the way she stood between her sisters and danger, in the way she'd told the truth even knowing it might destroy her. She wasn't soft. She wasn't fragile. She was exactly the kind of woman who could survive these mountains. And if Victor Hale's men came looking for her, they'd learn the same lesson Silas's father had taught him years ago. Some things are worth dying for. Some fights you don't walk away from. And some women don't break, no matter how hard you push. The fire crackled. The wind howled. And Silas Vance prepared for war. Dawn brought no comfort, only the hard truth that hiding was over. Silas woke the household before sunrise, his voice cutting through the last remnants of sleep. Everyone up? We've got work to do. Evelyn was already awake, had been for hours. She'd spent the night cataloging every sound, every creak of wood, every whisper of wind that might mask approaching footsteps. Clara slept fitfully beside her, whimpering in her dreams. Margaret had given up on sleep entirely around 3, and now sat by the window watching darkness fade to gray. In the main room, Boone had coffee brewing, the smell sharp and bitter. Ryder was cleaning rifles, laying them out on the table with methodical precision. Elias stood by the door, arms crossed, looking younger than his 23 years. "We need to establish perimeters," Silas said without preamble. "Sight lines, escape routes, positions where we can defend if it comes to that." "You really think they'll come here?" Anne asked. She'd emerged from the bedroom fully dressed, hair braided tight, always ready to run. "Yes." "When?" "Could be days, could be weeks. Hale's men won't rush. They'll watch, gather information, wait for the right moment." Silas poured coffee, black and strong. "That gives us time to prepare." "Prepare how?" Evelyn accepted the cup he offered, their fingers brushing again. She was starting to recognize his hands, the scar across his left knuckles, the callus on his trigger finger. "First, we need to know exactly what we're dealing with. Tell me everything about Victor Hale." Evelyn sat at the table. Her sisters gathered around her like planets orbiting a sun. She took a breath, organized her thoughts, and began. Victor Hale started as a dock worker in Philadelphia 30 years ago. Now he owns shipping companies, textile factories, half the warehouses along the Delaware River. He's got judges in his pocket, police on his payroll. If you need something moved, legal or otherwise, you go through Hale. "And your father borrowed from him," Silas said. "Father was desperate. The textile business was failing, creditors circling. Hale offered a loan at reasonable rates, seemed almost kind about it." Evelyn's mouth twisted. "We didn't understand the terms. The interest compounded daily. By the time Father realized what he'd agreed to, the debt had tripled." "How much did he originally borrow?" $7,000. Within 2 years it was 20. Boone whistled low. "That's predatory." "That's Hale. He doesn't lend money to help people. He lends it to own them." Margaret spoke up, voice tight. "When Father got sick, Hale came to the house. Said he'd forgive the debt if we agreed to work for him. He made it sound legitimate, office work, bookkeeping. But Clara overheard him talking to his men. He runs brothels, gambling houses, places where women disappear." Clara's hand shook around her coffee cup. "I heard him say our names, how much each of us would earn him, like we were inventory." "So you ran," Ryder said. "We buried Father on a Tuesday," Evelyn said. "Thursday morning, before Hale could send men to collect us, we took what little money was left and bought train tickets west. We changed our names, split up at different stations, met back up in St. Louis. The bride advertisement seemed perfect, remote, isolated, somewhere Hale wouldn't think to look." "Except he did think to look," Silas said, "apparently. These men Morrison mentioned, how many will Hale send? However many it takes. Money isn't an issue for him." "What about violence? Will they try to take you quietly or make a statement?" Evelyn met his eyes. "Hale doesn't forgive debts, and he doesn't tolerate defiance. If his men find us, they'll make it hurt. Not just for us, for anyone who helped us." The implication hung heavy. Silas absorbed it without flinching. "Then we make sure they don't find you." "You can't guarantee that." "No, but I can make it expensive enough that Hale decides you're not worth the cost." Silas turned to his brothers. "Boone, I want you to ride into town, talk to friendly faces. Morrison will spread the word, but we need everyone on the same page. Nobody's seen these women. Anyone asks, we're still bachelors living alone." "What if someone already talked?" Boone asked. "Then we deal with it. But most folks around here don't trust outsiders asking questions. They'll keep quiet if they think there's good reason. And if Hale's men offer enough money, then we find out who our real friends are." Ryder stood, stretching. "What about defenses? We can't just sit here waiting. We fortify, check the perimeter, set up early warning systems. Anyone approaches, we know about it before they're in rifle range." Silas looked at the sisters. "And we keep training. If shooting starts, everyone needs to know which end of the gun to point." Over the next 3 days, the cabin transformed into something between a home and a fortress. Boone rode into town and returned with supplies, extra ammunition, canned goods, medical supplies. He reported that Tom Weller at the general store had indeed mentioned seeing women arrive at the Vance property, But Morrison and others had convinced him to keep his mouth shut for now. For now, Boone emphasized, Weller's not reliable. If someone waves enough cash under his nose, he'll sing. Then we work fast, Silas said. Ryder and Elias spent long hours in the woods, setting up warning systems, tripwires attached to bells, carefully placed mirrors that would reflect light if someone passed, subtle markers that would tell them if the perimeter had been breached. It was crude, but effective. Evelyn watched them work, absorbing every detail. She'd spent her life in cities, where danger came from dark alleys and men who smiled while planning violence. Mountain danger was different, more honest, more direct. She appreciated that. The shooting lessons continued daily. Clara improved slowly, her hands still shaking but her aim getting steadier. Margaret was a natural, her focus absolute when she held a rifle. Anne remained cautious but competent. Evelyn pushed herself hardest. Every morning, before the others woke, she'd take a rifle to the clearing and practice until her shoulder ached and her fingers cramped. Silas found her there on the fourth morning, dawn light just breaking over the peaks. "You're going to hurt yourself," he said. "I'm already hurt." She fired, missed, cursed under her breath. "I need to be better." "You're plenty good." "Good isn't enough. I need to be certain." She reloaded with practiced efficiency. "When they come, and they will come, I can't hesitate. Can't afford to miss. It's not just about hitting the target. Then what's it about?" Silas moved behind her, adjusted her stance slightly. His hands on her shoulders were warm despite the cold. "It's about understanding what you're willing to do. Shooting bottles is practice. Shooting a man is something else entirely." "You've done it." "Yes." "How many?" "Does it matter?" Evelyn lowered the rifle, turned to face him. They were close enough that she could see the gray in his stubble, the old scar above his left eyebrow. "Tell me it gets easier." "I'd be lying." "Then tell me something true." Silas was quiet for a long moment. Behind them, the sun crested the mountains, painting everything gold. "First time I killed a man, I was 17. Cattle rustler tried to shoot Boone. I didn't think, just reacted, put a bullet through his chest. He looked at his hands like they belonged to someone else. I threw up afterward, shook for hours, couldn't eat for 2 days. But you did it again. Had to. That's what the mountains teach you. Survival matters more than comfort, more than guilt." His eyes found hers. "You do what needs doing, and you live with it after." "I don't want to live with it." "Then you should have stayed in Philadelphia." The words were harsh but not unkind. Evelyn understood what he wasn't saying. She'd made her choice when she ran, made it again when she brought her sisters here, would make it a third time when Hale's men arrived. The killing was just another consequence of that first decision to survive. "Teach me," she said. "I am teaching you." "No. Teach me what you know, not target practice, real fighting, how to kill someone who's trying to kill me." Silas studied her face. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he nodded slowly. "All right, but not you alone. All of you. If we're doing this, we're doing it right." That afternoon, the real training began. Silas gathered everyone in the clearing. The snow had melted enough to reveal hard ground, frozen mud that would turn treacherous when the next storm hit. "Shooting's important," he said, "but most fights don't happen at rifle range. They happen close, too close to aim properly. So we need to talk about what you do when someone's on top of you." Clara went pale. "I don't think I can." "You can." Silas's voice was firm, but not cruel. "Because the alternative is worse. You understand?" She nodded shakily. "Good. Anne, you're first." Anne stepped forward, chin raised defiantly. Silas handed her a knife, dull blade, safe for practice. "Someone grabs you from behind. What do? Scream?" "Maybe. But screaming doesn't stop them. Show me how you'd break free." Anne struggled through the exercise, her movements awkward and panicked. Silas corrected her patiently, showing her where to strike, how to use her weight, where men were vulnerable. "Eyes, throat, groin," he repeated. "You're smaller, but you can hurt someone badly if you know where to hit." Margaret was next, then Clara. Evelyn watched each attempt, memorizing the techniques, analyzing the mistakes. When her turn came, she moved with deliberate purpose. Silas grabbed her from behind, arms pinning hers. "What now?" Evelyn drove her heel into his instep, snapped her head back into his chin, twisted sideways, and brought her elbow into his ribs. Not full force. She wasn't trying to actually hurt him, but hard enough to show she understood. Silas released her, rubbing his jaw. "Where'd you learn that?" "Nowhere. I'm just paying attention." "Well, pay attention to this." He demonstrated a throw, showed her how to use an attacker's momentum against them, how to turn being smaller into an advantage. You won't win on strength, so you win on speed, on surprise, on being willing to do things they don't expect. They drilled for hours. By the end, everyone was bruised, exhausted, and substantially more dangerous than they'd been that morning. That night, over dinner, the conversation turned to tactics. "We're assuming they'll come at night," Ryder said. "That's when most attacks happen. Harder to see, easier to cause confusion." "Maybe," Evelyn said. "But Hale's men are professionals. They might come during the day, when we're spread out, harder to defend." "You know them that well?" "I know Hale. He doesn't hire stupid people." She pushed food around her plate. "He'll send scouts first, watch our patterns, figure out weaknesses. Then he'll strike when we're most vulnerable." "So we don't have patterns," Silas said. "We vary everything. Sleep schedules, guard rotations, daily routines, make it impossible to predict." Boone leaned back in his chair. "That's exhausting. Being dead is more exhausting." "Fair point." The days blurred together. Training, preparing, waiting. The tension wore on everyone differently. Clara grew quieter, retreating into herself. Margaret threw herself into practice with almost manic intensity. Anne watched the tree line constantly, fingers drumming against whatever surface was nearest. Evelyn held them together through sheer force of will. She organized watch schedules, managed supplies, kept everyone fed and functional. Silas watched her work with something approaching admiration. She wasn't just surviving, she was commanding. On the 8th night, Margaret was on watch when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong, metal against stone, too deliberate to be an animal. She rang the bell 3 times, the agreed-upon signal, and the cabin erupted. Silas grabbed his rifle and was out the door in seconds. Boone went high, climbing to the loft window with a clear sightline. Ryder covered the back. Elias stayed inside with the women, his rifle pointed at the door. "Where?" Silas called softly. Margaret pointed northeast toward the ridge trail. "Something's out there." They waited. Minutes stretched. Evelyn stood with her rifle, positioned where she could cover both windows and the door. Her heart hammered, but her hand stayed steady. Then a shape emerged from the trees. Horse. Single rider, moving slowly. Not the approach of an attack, too cautious, too exposed. The rider raised one hand, palm forward, universal sign of peace. Silas lowered his rifle slightly, but didn't relax. "State your business." The voice that answered was female, ragged, with exhaustion. "I'm looking for the Vance brothers. Jake Morrison sent me." "Why?" "Because 3 men are camped 5 miles south of here, asking about women. They've been there 2 days gathering information." The woman urged her horse closer, into the light spilling from the cabin. She was maybe 30, weather-beaten, with hard eyes and a rifle slung across her back. "Morrison thought you should know they're planning to move tomorrow." Evelyn's blood went cold. Silas gestured the woman forward. "Come inside, slowly." She dismounted, moved with the careful, non-threatening posture of someone who knew how close she was to being shot. Inside the cabin, in full light, Evelyn recognized her, Sarah Chen, a trapper who sometimes sold pelts in town. "Thanks for the warning," Silas said. "What else did Morrison say?" "That if you need help, there's a few folks willing. Not many. People are scared of Hale's reach. But some." Sarah accepted the coffee Elias offered. "He also said to tell you that Tom Weller's been talking, took money from those Eastern men, told them everything he knew." "Which is?" "That 4 women matching their description arrived here 2 weeks ago. That you claimed them as mail-order brides. That you've been keeping them isolated." Sarah looked at Evelyn. "They know you're here. They're just deciding how to take you." The room went silent. Clara started crying again, quiet, desperate sobs. Margaret put an arm around her, but her own face was white with fear. Anne looked ready to bolt. Evelyn forced herself to think past the terror. 5 miles south. That's the old mining camp?" Sarah nodded. 3 men, well armed. One of them's doing most of the talking, tall, scarred face, missing 2 fingers on his left hand. Decker, Evelyn breathed. Vincent Decker. He's Hale's enforcer. You know him? Know of him. He's the one who handles problems that won't solve themselves. She looked at Silas. If Hale sent Decker, he's not interested in taking us back alive. This is punishment. Silas processed this information with frightening calm. How good is he? Very. He's killed at least 12 men that we know of. Probably more. Combat experience? Army. Served out west, fighting Indians. Dishonorable discharge for excessive violence. Evelyn's hands clenched. He's not just dangerous, he's vicious. Enjoys it. Ryder spoke up. 3 men. We've got 4 plus 5 women who can shoot. Numbers favor us. Numbers don't mean anything if they hit us while we're sleeping, Boone countered. So we don't sleep. Silas turned to Sarah. Can you get word back to Morrison? Tell him we need eyes on that camp. Any movement we want to know immediately. I can do that. Good. Tell him we're grateful, but also tell him to keep his people clear. This is about to get ugly, and I don't want anyone caught in the middle who doesn't need to be. Sarah finished her coffee and stood. Morrison said you were stubborn. Didn't mention you were suicidal. There's a difference between suicidal and committed. Not much of one. She headed for the door, paused. For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Hale's the kind of bastard who needs standing up to. Just wish you had better odds. We'll make our own odds. After Sarah left, the cabin fell into tense planning. Maps were spread on the table. Defensive positions debated. Scenarios war-gamed. Evelyn listened to it all, her mind working furiously. They were talking about defending, surviving, making the attack costly enough to drive Decker back. But that wouldn't work. Hale didn't care about cost. He cared about winning, about making examples of people who defied him. This is wrong, she said suddenly. Everyone turned. What do you mean? Silas asked. We're thinking about this wrong. Defense might keep us alive tonight, maybe tomorrow, but Decker won't quit. He'll regroup, come back with more men, hit us again and again until we break. She stood, started pacing. We can't just survive this. We have to end it. End it how? Ryder asked. We go to them. The room exploded. That's insane, Boone said. That's suicide, Margaret added. Silas held up a hand, silencing everyone. His eyes were on Evelyn. Explain. Decker's expecting us to wait here, to fortify, to defend. That's what makes sense tactically. So we do the opposite. We hit them first, hit them hard, before they're ready. She leaned over the map, traced the route to the mining camp. It's 5 miles through rough terrain. We could be there in 2 hours, attack at dawn when they're least alert. 6 of us against 3 trained killers, Anne said flatly. Great odds. Better than waiting for them to pick the time and place. Evelyn looked at her sister. They're planning an attack. That means they're focused outward, watching us. They won't expect us to come to them. Silas was nodding slowly. Element of surprise. Hit them when they're confident, when their guard is down. Exactly. It's still a hell of a risk. Everything's a risk. This way, at least we're choosing when to take it. Clara's voice was small, frightened. And if it doesn't work? If they kill you? Evelyn knelt beside her sister, took her hands. Then you run. You take Margaret and Anne, and you run as fast and as far as you can. But Clara, listen to me. If we don't stop Decker here, he'll follow us forever. We'll never be safe. This is our chance to end it. How? Even if you kill Decker and his men, Hale will just send more. Maybe. But killing Decker sends a message. That we're not easy prey, that the cost is too high. Hale's a businessman. If we're more expensive than we're worth, he'll cut his losses. It was half hope, half bluff, but Clara seemed to believe it. She nodded, wiping tears. Silas stood. Everyone who's going, get ready. We'll leave in 1 hour. Light gear, weapons, ammunition. No one goes alone. We move as a unit. We fight as a unit. I'm coming, Evelyn said. Figured you would. Me too, Anne added. Anne, no, Evelyn started. You don't get to tell me no. Not about this. Anne's jaw was set. You think I'll just sit here waiting? I'm the best shot after Margaret. You need me. She was right, and Evelyn knew it. Fine, but you do exactly what Silas says. No improvising. Same goes for you. Margaret stepped forward. I'll stay with Clara. Someone needs to hold the cabin if this goes wrong. You sure? Silas asked. I'm sure. Clara needs me more than you do out there. Clara looked like she wanted to protest but didn't have the strength. She just nodded, clinging to Margaret's hand. The next hour passed in a blur of preparation. Weapons checked, ammunition distributed, final instructions given. Silas pulled Evelyn aside as everyone was gearing up. You understand what you're asking for? He said quietly. This isn't practice. This isn't shooting bottles. You're going to kill men tonight or die trying. I know. And you're ready for that? Evelyn thought about her father, dying slowly in a Philadelphia boarding house, whispering his last words. She thought about Clara's sobs in the night, about Margaret's forced cheerfulness, about Anne's constant vigilance. She thought about Victor Hale sitting in his office, treating human beings like commodities to be bought and sold. I'm ready. Silas searched her face, looking for doubt. Finding none, he nodded. Then let's go hunting. They left under cover of darkness, 6 figures moving through the forest like ghosts. Silas led, with Boone and Ryder flanking. Evelyn and Anne stayed center, protected but ready. Elias brought up the rear, covering their backs. The terrain was brutal, frozen ground that cracked underfoot, hidden roots that caught ankles, branches that slapped faces in the dark. They moved slowly, carefully, stopping every few minutes to listen. 2 hours later, they reached the ridge overlooking the mining camp. Below, 3 figures sat around a fire. Even from this distance, Evelyn could make out Decker, taller than the others, moving with the confidence of a man who'd never lost a fight. The other 2 were younger, nervous, smoking cigarettes and checking their weapons compulsively. Silas gathered everyone close. Decker's mine. Boone, you take the one on the left. Ryder, right side. Evelyn, Anne, Elias, you provide covering fire. Anyone runs, you drop them. Anyone fights back, you keep them pinned. Clear? Nods all around. We do this fast and loud. No mercy, no hesitation. They wouldn't show us any. Silas checked his rifle one final time. On my signal, they spread out along the ridge, finding positions behind rocks and trees. Evelyn's heart was trying to beat out of her chest. She forced herself to breathe slowly, to sight down the rifle, to find her target. Below, one of Decker's men laughed at something, the sound carrying clear in the cold air. Silas raised his hand, held it, then brought it down. The night exploded. 6 rifles spoke as one. The man on the left dropped instantly, Boone's bullet catching him in the chest before he could even register the sound. The one on the right lurched sideways, Ryder's shot hitting his shoulder instead of center mass. He screamed, reaching for his pistol with his good hand. Decker moved, not toward cover like a normal man would, toward the threat. He rolled behind a supply crate, came up firing, his revolver barking 3 times in rapid succession. Splinters exploded from the tree next to Silas's head. Keep pressure on him, Silas shouted, working his bolt action, firing again. Evelyn found the wounded man in her sights. He was scrambling for his rifle, one arm dangling useless. She squeezed the trigger. The recoil slammed into her shoulder. The man jerked once and went still. Her first kill. No time to process it. Decker was moving again, using the fire for cover, his shadow dancing across the camp as he weaved between obstacles. He fired twice more, forcing Ryder to duck. He's trying to flank, Elias called out. Anne, shift right. Cut him off. Silas was already moving, circling left to box Decker in. Anne scrambled through the brush, her rifle held tight. Evelyn followed, covering her sister's back. Below, Decker had disappeared into the darkness beyond the firelight. For 10 seconds, nothing, just the crackle of flames and the ringing aftermath of gunfire. Then a shadow detached from behind an old mining cart. Decker, moving fast and low. He'd circled around, was trying to get behind them. There! Evelyn swung her rifle, fired without really aiming, missed by a foot. Decker spun, his revolver coming up. Anne fired first. The bullet caught him in the leg, spinning him around. He went down hard but didn't drop his gun. Silas appeared from the left, rifle leveled. Don't move. Decker laughed. Actually laughed, blood streaming down his leg, his gun still in his hand. You got no idea what you just did. I've got a pretty good idea. Silas moved closer, keeping his rifle trained on Decker's chest. Drop the weapon. Or what? You'll kill me? Decker's scarred face split in a grin. I'm already dead. Moment I don't come back, Hale sends 10 more, then 20. He'll burn this mountain to ash before he lets those women go. Maybe, but you won't be around to see it. That's supposed to scare me? Decker shifted slightly, testing whether Silas would shoot. I've been dying my whole life, boy. This is just a different kind of Tuesday. Evelyn stepped into the firelight, her rifle pointed at Decker's head. He looked at her and something changed in his expression. Recognition mixed with contempt. Well, the eldest Hart's sister. Victor said you were the smart one. His eyes traveled up and down her body with deliberate insult. Said you were also the least valuable. Can't imagine why. The words were designed to wound. Evelyn felt them hit, felt the old shame try to surface. But she'd spent too many nights in the cold learning to shoot, too many hours training to fight. She wasn't that woman anymore, the one who accepted other people's judgments. Tell me about Hale's operation, she said quietly. Decker spat blood. Go to hell. You first. She didn't lower the rifle. You're going to tell me everything. How many men he has, who he pays, where he keeps his records. All of it. And if I don't? Then you die slowly instead of fast. Something in her voice made Decker's smile falter. He looked at Silas, then back to Evelyn, and seemed to realize that she meant every word. You won't get anything from me, he said, but there was less certainty now. We'll see. Boone and Ryder had come down from the ridge, were checking the other two bodies. Both dead, Boone confirmed. Tie him up, Silas said, gesturing to Decker. We're taking him back. Bad idea, Decker said. I don't show up in 3 days. Hale's men come looking. You want that? What I want is information. You're going to provide it. They bound Decker's hands behind his back, fashioned a tourniquet for his leg. He cursed them the entire time, but didn't resist much. The blood loss was making him weak. The journey back took twice as long with a prisoner. Decker stumbled frequently, his leg dragging. Halfway up the ridge, he fell hard. Silas hauled him back to his feet without gentleness. Keep moving. Or what? You already said you're not killing me. I said we're taking you back, didn't say you'd arrive comfortable. They reached the cabin as dawn broke gray and cold. Margaret met them at the door, rifle ready, Clara hiding behind her. Both women went pale when they saw the blood. Is anyone hurt? Margaret asked. Not us, Silas said. He shoved Decker toward a chair. Yeesh. Watch him. He tries anything. Shoot him in the other leg. Margaret's hands tightened on her rifle. Gladly. Inside, exhaustion hit Evelyn like a physical weight. The adrenaline that had carried her through the fight was gone, leaving only bone-deep weariness and a shaking in her hands she couldn't control. She'd killed a man. She kept seeing it, the way he'd jerked when her bullet hit, the way he'd fallen. It replayed behind her eyes every time she blinked. Anne sat beside her, equally pale. You okay? No, you. No. They sat in silence, sharing the weight of what they'd done. There was nothing else to say. Words couldn't change it, couldn't make it lighter. They'd crossed a line tonight, and there was no going back. Silas was interrogating Decker, his voice low and hard. Evelyn couldn't make out the words, but she could hear Decker's defiant responses, the mockery in his tone. He's not going to talk, Ryder said quietly. Men like that, they'd rather die than break. Then he'll die, Silas said, loud enough for everyone to hear. That got Decker's attention. You don't have the stomach for it. You keep thinking that. Boone brought coffee, pressed a cup into Evelyn's hands. Drink. You're in shock. She drank. The heat helped, but the shaking didn't stop. First time's the hardest, Boone said. Not unkindly. Gets easier after. Does it? No, but you get better at living with it. Across the room, Silas had given up on subtle interrogation. Last chance, Decker, tell me about Hale's operation, or I put you outside and let the mountain finish what we started. Hale owns Philadelphia. You think killing me changes that? I think it sends a message. Yeah? What message is that? That we're not scared. Silas leaned close. That we'll do whatever it takes to protect what's ours. You go back and tell Hale that 4 women weren't worth 3 good men. Tell him the mountains don't give a damn about his money or his power. Decker laughed bitterly. I'm not going back, you idiot. You shot me in the leg, killed my men, dragged me up a mountain. Hale doesn't forgive failure. Then you've got nothing to lose by talking. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Decker's face. He was weighing his options, realizing they were all bad. "If I talk," he said slowly, "what do I get?" "Your life. A head start before we tell Hale where you went. That's not much. It's more than you deserve." Decker was quiet for a long moment. Then, almost imperceptibly, he nodded. "All right. What do you want to know?" Over the next hour, Decker spilled everything. Hale's network was bigger than Evelyn had imagined. Warehouses full of stolen goods, ships that smuggled opium from China, judges who threw cases for cash. He had men in the police department, the mayor's office, even the state legislature. "He's got a ledger," Decker said. "Keeps track of everything. Payments, debts, who owes what. It's his insurance policy. Anyone tries to move against him, he threatens to expose them." "Where's the ledger?" Evelyn asked. "His private office. 4th floor of the Harrison Building, downtown Philadelphia. He keeps it in a safe behind a painting of some dead president." "How do you know?" "Because I've seen it. He showed me once, wanted me to understand how deep his reach went." Decker's expression was ugly. He's proud of it, thinks it makes him untouchable. Evelyn's mind was racing. A ledger, physical proof of corruption, of crimes, of every dirty deal Hale had made. If they could get it, expose it. "You're thinking too small," Decker said, reading her expression. "Even with the ledger, you can't touch him. He's too connected, too rich. You'd need an army." "Or just the right person," Evelyn said quietly. After Decker was secured in the barn, still tied, his leg bandaged enough to keep him alive, the group gathered around the table. Clara had finally stopped crying. Margaret looked exhausted. Anne sat cleaning her rifle with mechanical precision. "We need to decide what we're doing," Silas said. Decker was right about one thing. When he doesn't report back, Hale will send more men. We bought ourselves time, but not much. "How much time?" Clara asked. "Week? Maybe 2 if we're lucky." "Then we use it." Evelyn stood, started pacing. "We can't just hide here forever. Eventually, Hale's reach will extend even to these mountains. We need to end this permanently." "How?" Ryder asked. "We can't fight Hale's whole organization." "No, but we can destroy his power." Evelyn turned to face them. "That ledger Decker mentioned, if we could get it, expose what's inside, Hale's protection disappears. His allies turn on him to save themselves. Without them, he's just another criminal." "That's a big if," Boone said. "How do you plan to get into Hale's private office? Walk through the front door?" "Maybe." Everyone stared at her. "You're serious," Silas said. "I'm desperate. There's a difference." Evelyn stopped pacing, organized her thoughts. "Hale thinks we're hiding. He expects us to stay in the mountains, waiting for him to come get us. He doesn't expect us to go back to Philadelphia." "Because that would be insane," Anne said. "Exactly. Which is why it might work." Evelyn looked at her sisters. "We know the city. We know people who worked for Father, people who might help if they understood what Hale really is. And we know his routines, when he's at the office, when he's not." "You're talking about breaking into one of the most powerful men in Philadelphia's private office and stealing his insurance policy," Margaret said slowly. "That's not just dangerous, that's suicide." "Staying here is suicide too, just slower." Silas was watching Evelyn with that unreadable expression he got when he was thinking hard. "Say you get the ledger, then what?" "We take it to someone who can use it. A newspaper, a federal marshal, someone outside Hale's control." Evelyn sat down, suddenly tired. "I don't know all the details yet, but I know hiding isn't working. I know Decker won't be the last man Hale sends, and I know that ledger is the only weapon we have that might actually hurt him." The room was silent. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Finally, Silas spoke. "It's a hell of a risk." "Everything's a risk?" "True." He looked at his brothers. "What do you think?" Boone shrugged. "I think we're already in too deep to back out now. Might as well go all the way." Ryder nodded. "Agreed. Besides, I'm curious to see if she can actually pull this off." Elias was quiet. Then, "I think if anyone can do it, it's her." All eyes turned to Evelyn. She felt the weight of their trust, their faith that she had a plan beyond desperate improvisation. "I need to think," she said. "Work out the details. But yes, I think we can do this." We, Silas repeated. You're not doing this alone. You can't all come to Philadelphia. You'd stand out, and we need someone here to protect Clara and Margaret. Then I'm coming with you. His tone left no room for argument. You'll need backup, someone who can fight if things go wrong. Silas, non-negotiable. You want to walk into the lion's den, fine. But you're not doing it without someone watching your back. Evelyn wanted to argue, but the truth was she'd be lying if she said she didn't want him there. The thought of going back to Philadelphia alone made her stomach twist. Having Silas beside her, solid, capable, dangerous when he needed to be, made the impossible seem merely improbable. All right, she said. You and me. Anne should come too. She knows the city as well as I do, and she's a better shot. Anne nodded without hesitation. That leaves Boone, Ryder, and Elias here with Clara and Margaret, Silas said. You three can hold the cabin if more of Hale's men show up. We held it when you were gone before, Boone said. We'll hold it again. The decision made, they spent the rest of the day preparing. Maps of Philadelphia were spread out, routes discussed, contingencies planned. Evelyn drew diagrams of the Harrison building from memory. Entrances, stairwells, where the guards usually stood. The fourth floor is executive offices, she explained. During business hours, there's a secretary at the main desk, usually 2 guards in the hallway. After hours, just guards, maybe 3, 4 if Hale's being cautious. How do we get past them? Anne asked. We don't. We wait until they're distracted, then slip through. Distracted how? Evelyn smiled grimly. I'm still working on that part. Night fell. Clara and Margaret prepared food while the others continued planning. Decker remained in the barn, secured but alive. Silas had posted Elias outside to watch him. Around midnight, Evelyn went to check on the prisoner. She found him slumped in the corner, face gray with pain and blood loss. Come to gloat? He asked when he saw her. Come to understand. Understand what? Why you do it? Work for a man like Hale. Hurt people for money. She sat down across from him, close enough to talk quietly. You were Army. You could have done anything after you got out. Why this? Decker laughed weakly. You think I had choices? I came back from the territories with a dishonorable discharge and a taste for violence. Nobody wants to hire that. Hale did. That's not an answer. That's an excuse. Maybe. He shifted, wincing. You want the truth? I'm good at hurting people. Always have been. At least with Hale, I got paid for it. Better than doing it for free, like I did in the Army. That doesn't bother you? Why would it? World's full of people hurting each other. I just got better at it than most. His eyes fixed on her. You'll learn that soon enough. You already started, killed that man tonight without blinking. Another few months, you'll be just like me. No. Yes, that's how it works. You do what you gotta do to survive. And eventually, you forget why you were trying to survive in the first place. You just keep going. Evelyn stood. I'm nothing like you. Not yet. Give it time. She left him there, his words following her back to the cabin. Inside, she found Silas still awake, sitting by the fire. Can't sleep? He asked. Can't stop thinking. She sat beside him. Decker said something about how doing what's necessary eventually turns you into the kind of person who doesn't care why they're doing it. Decker's a sociopath. Don't listen to him. But what if he's right? What if killing those men tonight was just the first step toward becoming something worse? Silas was quiet for a moment. You know the difference between you and Decker? What? He hurts people because he likes it. You hurt people because you have to. That difference matters. Does it? Dead is still dead. Intent matters. You killed those men to protect your sisters, to survive. Decker kills because he enjoys watching people suffer. If you can't see the difference, you're not paying attention. Evelyn wanted to believe him. She desperately wanted to believe that she could do terrible things without becoming a terrible person. But the doubt was there, planted by Decker's words, watered by her own guilt. What if I start to like it? She asked quietly. Then I'll tell you, and you'll stop. Silas looked at her steadily. That's what having people around you does. They keep you honest, remind you who you are when you forget. Is that what your brothers do for you? When they're not annoying the hell out of me? Yes. Despite everything, Evelyn smiled. There was something comforting about Silas's blunt honesty, the way he refused to pretty things up or make them easier to swallow. They sat in silence, watching the fire burn down. Outside, the mountain was dark and still. Somewhere in that darkness, more of Hale's men might be coming, but for this moment, they were safe. "When do we leave?" Evelyn asked finally. 3 days. Gives us time to prepare for Decker to heal enough that we can move him." "Move him where?" "Town. We'll leave him with Morrison. Let him decide what to do with him." Silas poked at the fire. "If Decker's smart, he'll disappear. If not, that's his problem." "You're not worried he'll warn Hale?" "By the time Decker gets word to Philadelphia, we'll already be there." Silas stood, stretched. "Get some sleep. We've got a long few days ahead." Evelyn knew he was right, but sleep felt impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the man she'd killed, felt the rifle's recoil, heard the sound of the bullet hitting flesh. She lay awake until dawn, listening to her sisters breathe, feeling the weight of decisions pressing down on her chest like stones. The next 3 days passed in intense preparation. They gathered supplies, money, weapons, civilian clothes that wouldn't draw attention in the city. Silas drilled them on the plan until everyone could recite it in their sleep. Anne practiced picking locks using an old set Boone had from his brief, unsuccessful career as a locksmith. On the second day, Sarah Chen returned with news. "Morrison says more of Hale's men arrived in town. 6 this time, asking the same questions. They know about the fight at the mining camp. Someone found the bodies." "How are they acting?" Silas asked. "Cautious. They're not rushing up here. They're gathering information, trying to figure out what happened." Sarah glanced toward the barn where Decker was kept. "They're also asking about him specifically. Seems Hale wants his enforcer back. He can want all he likes." "Morrison also said to tell you that Tom Weller disappeared. Left town 2 nights ago, didn't tell anyone where he was going." Evelyn felt a chill. Hale got to him. Probably. Or Weller got scared and ran. Either way, he's gone. After Sarah left, the mood in the cabin turned grimmer. 6 men meant serious resources. It meant Hale was escalating. "All the more reason to hit him where it hurts," Evelyn said. "If we can get that ledger, expose his operation, those 6 men won't matter. They'll scatter the second their paychecks stop coming." "Big if," Ryder muttered. "Only kind we've got." On the 3rd morning, they prepared to leave. Boone had arranged for horses, for supplies, for a route that would take them around town rather than through it. Evelyn watched Margaret help Clara pack a bag with food for the journey, her sister's hands shaking. "You'll be safe here," Evelyn told her. "Boone and Ryder won't let anything happen to you." "I'm not worried about me." Claire's eyes were red. "I'm worried about you. Philadelphia is where this all started. Going back there, it's like walking into a trap." "Maybe. But it's also where we end it." Evelyn hugged her sister tight. "Stay strong. Help Margaret. And if something goes wrong, if we don't come back, you run. You hear me? You run, and you don't look back." Clara nodded against her shoulder, crying quietly. Margaret was more composed but equally worried. "Bring her back safe," she told Silas. "Both of them." "That's the plan." They left at noon, riding out under a gray sky that threatened snow. Evelyn looked back once, saw the cabin getting smaller, saw Boone and Ryder standing guard, saw Clara and Margaret in the doorway watching them go. Then they rounded a bend, and the cabin disappeared. Beside her, Silas rode in silence, his rifle across his saddle, his eyes scanning the terrain. Anne was ahead, moving with the easy confidence of someone who'd grown up riding. "You're quiet," Silas said after a while. "Thinking." "About?" "Everything that could go wrong." "That's a long list." "I know." Evelyn urged her horse forward, matching his pace. "You ever get scared before a fight?" "Every time." "How do you deal with it?" "I don't. I just move forward anyway." He glanced at her. "Fear's not the enemy. Paralysis is. You can be scared and still act. That's what courage is." "I don't feel courageous." "Nobody does. But you're riding toward danger instead of away from it. That's courageous whether you feel it or not." They rode through the afternoon, following game trails and frozen streams, avoiding the main roads. By evening, they'd put 20 miles between themselves and the cabin. They made camp in a hollow, sheltered from the wind. No fire, just cold rations and colder ground. Anne took first watch. Evelyn lay wrapped in blankets, staring up at stars that seemed close enough to touch. Somewhere in those stars, her father was watching. Or maybe he wasn't. Maybe death was just darkness, and all the fighting and surviving was for nothing. She pushed the thought away. Philosophy was a luxury she couldn't afford. Silas shifted beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. You should sleep. Should, can't. Try anyway. She closed her eyes, forced herself to breathe slowly. Gradually, exhaustion won over anxiety. She drifted off to the sound of wind through pines and the soft rhythm of Silas's breathing. When she woke, Anne was shaking her shoulder. Someone's coming. Evelyn was on her feet instantly, rifle in hand. Silas was already awake, positioned behind a tree, watching the trail they'd followed. Two riders appeared in the pre-dawn gloom. They moved carefully, checking the ground for tracks. Hale's men, Anne whispered. How'd they find us? Evelyn's mind raced. They'd been careful, covered their tracks. Doesn't matter. They're here. Silas sighted down his rifle. We can't outrun them. Have to deal with them now. Wait. Evelyn grabbed his arm. If we kill them, Hale knows for sure we're headed east. But if we capture them, question them. You want to take prisoners again? I want information. Silas considered, then nodded. All right, but we do this fast. They let the riders get close, let them focus on the tracks, let them think they were the hunters instead of the prey. Then Silas stepped out from cover, rifle leveled. Don't move! The lead rider went for his gun. Anne shot him in the shoulder before he cleared leather. He screamed, tumbling from his horse. The second rider froze, hands raised. Smart man, Silas said. Now get down, slowly. 5 minutes later, they had both men bound and disarmed. The one Anne shot was bleeding badly, cursing between gritted teeth. The other was young, maybe 20, scared out of his mind. Tell me how you found us, Evelyn demanded. The young one looked at his partner, who nodded grimly. We've been tracking you since you left. Boss figured you'd head east eventually, so he had us watching the trails. How many others are there? Just us. The rest are still in town waiting for orders. Evelyn studied his face, looking for the lie. Finding none, she felt a small measure of relief. 2 men they could handle. 6 would have been a problem. What's Hale planning? Silas asked. I don't know. They don't tell us that stuff. We just follow orders. The wounded man spat blood. You're all dead. You know that? Hale's gonna burn everything you love. Everyone who helped you. He's gonna make you watch. He's gotta find us first, Evelyn said. He already did, sweetheart. We did. Silas hit him. Not hard enough to do damage, just enough to shut him up. You're in no position to threaten anyone. They left the men bound to a tree, their horses hobbled nearby. Far enough from the trail that they wouldn't be found quickly, close enough to civilization that they'd survive if they were clever. Hale will know we're coming now, Anne said as they rode away. He was going to find out eventually, Evelyn replied. At least this way, we choose when and how. They pushed hard for the next 2 days, stopping only when the horses needed rest. By the time they reached the outskirts of Philadelphia, all 3 of them were exhausted, filthy, and running on nerves and determination. The city rose before them, smoke and steel and 1,000 lives crammed together. Evelyn had forgotten how loud it was, how it smelled of coal smoke and horses and humanity packed too tight. We need a place to stay, Silas said. Somewhere Hale won't think to look. I know a place. Evelyn guided them through back streets, avoiding the main thoroughfares. They ended up in a boarding house on the edge of the factory district, run by a woman named Mrs. Chen. No relation to Sarah, just coincidence. She eyed them suspiciously. You look like trouble. We're not, Evelyn lied. Just passing through, need a place to sleep. Mrs. Chen sniffed. 2 rooms, payment up front. Any trouble, and you're out. They paid, hauled their belongings upstairs, and collapsed into sleep that was more like unconsciousness. When Evelyn woke, it was dark outside. The city lights glowed through grimy windows. Beside her bed, Anne slept curled in a ball, her knife under her pillow. In the next room, she could hear Silas moving around, boots on floorboards. Tomorrow, they'd scout the Harrison building. They'd figure out how to get inside, how to get the ledger, how to get out alive. Tonight, they rested, because tomorrow, the real fight began. Morning came with the sound of factory whistles and the rattle of delivery carts on cobblestone. Evelyn woke stiff and sore, her body protesting the long ride and the thin mattress. Anne was already up, standing at the window with her arms crossed. It looks different, Anne said without turning around. What does? The city. I thought coming back would feel like coming home, but it just feels... She trailed off. Dangerous, Evelyn finished. Yeah, Silas knocked on the doorframe, already dressed. We need to move. Longer we stay in one place, more likely someone recognizes you. They ate a quick breakfast of stale bread and weak coffee in Mrs. Chen's kitchen, then headed out into the city. Evelyn had pulled a scarf over her hair, kept her head down. Anne walked differently than she used to, looser, more watchful. The mountains had changed them both. The Harrison building loomed 12 stories tall in the financial district, all granite and glass and the kind of architecture designed to intimidate. Evelyn had walked past it 100 times when her father's business was still running. She'd never been inside. They watched from across the street, positioned in the doorway of a closed shop. The main entrance had 2 guards in expensive suits, their eyes constantly scanning. Every person who entered got looked over, assessed. 4 floors up, Silas said quietly. How do we get there without going through the front? Service entrance, Evelyn pointed to an alley running along the building's side. Deliveries, maintenance workers, less security, but you need to look like you belong. Can you do that? Maybe. If I had the right clothes, the right attitude. She studied the building, her mind working through possibilities. There used to be a woman who worked for Father, Martha Keene. She did bookkeeping for half the businesses in this district. If she's still working, she might help us. Might? She was kind to us after Father died, brought food, offered what little money she could spare. But that was before Hale put a price on our heads. Worth the risk? Evelyn thought about it. Martha had been genuinely kind, the sort of person who helped because it was right, not because she expected something back, but kindness had limits when survival was on the line. I think so. But we approached carefully. They found Martha's office 3 blocks away, a cramped second-floor room above a tailor's shop. The stairs creaked with every step. Evelyn knocked, her heart hammering. The door opened a crack. A woman's face appeared, older than Evelyn remembered, more lined with worry. Martha's eyes went wide. Sweet mercy, Evelyn Hart? Can we come in, please? Martha's gaze darted past them, checking the street below. Then she pulled the door open fast. Quickly. Inside the office was chaos, papers stacked everywhere, ledgers covering every surface. Martha locked the door, turned to face them with her hands on her hips. Do you have any idea how many people are looking for you? I've got some idea, yes. Hale's offering $1,000 for information leading to your capture. $1,000, Evelyn. Half this city would sell their own mothers for that kind of money. Would you? Martha's expression softened. No, child. But I'm a fool, and there aren't many like me left. She looked at Silas and Anne. Who are your friends? People helping us. That's all you need to know. Fair enough. Martha sat heavily in her chair. What do you want? Access to the Harrison building, specifically Victor Hale's private office. Martha's face went pale. You're insane. Probably, but I'm also desperate, and I'm tired of running. Evelyn leaned forward. Hale has a ledger that documents his entire operation, everyone he's paid, every crime he's committed. If we can get it, we can destroy him. If he catches you, he'll kill you. He'll kill us anyway. At least this way we fight back. Martha was silent for a long moment, her fingers drumming on the desk. Hale's office is on the 4th floor, northeast corner. He's there Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, gone the rest of the week. Security is tightest when he's present, lightest on Monday mornings. Can you get us inside? Me? No. But I know someone who can. Martha stood, moved to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. James Brennan. He does maintenance for the building, cleans floors, fixes things. He hates Hale, lost his brother to one of Hale's gambling operations. If anyone would help you, it's him. She wrote an address on a piece of paper, handed it over. Tell him Martha sent you. Don't mention what you're planning. Just say you need to get inside for personal reasons. James doesn't ask questions if he thinks you're standing up to Hale. Thank you, Evelyn said. Don't thank me yet. This is likely to get you killed. Martha's eyes were worried. And Evelyn, if you do get that ledger, make sure people see it. Don't just hide it away. Men like Hale only fall when everyone knows what they've done. They left through the back stairs, emerged into an alley that smelled of rotting vegetables. Silas was quiet until they were several blocks away. You trust her? He asked. As much as I trust anyone in this city. Martha's had plenty of chances to turn us in before. If she wanted Hale's reward money, she would have taken it already. James Brennan lived in a tenement on the edge of the factory district, 4th floor, door marked with peeling paint. A thin man in his 40s answered their knock, suspicion immediate in his eyes. Yeah? Martha Keene sent us, Evelyn said. Said you might be able to help with a problem. The suspicion didn't leave, but he stepped aside. Come in, quick. The apartment was sparse. A bed, a table, a stove that didn't look like it worked. James closed the door, locked it, then turned to face them. What kind of problem? The kind involving Victor Hale. James's expression hardened. Keep talking. Evelyn laid it out. Not everything, but enough. They needed to get into Hale's office, needed access without being seen. Could he help? James was quiet for a long time, then, my brother Patrick worked for Hale. Thought he was getting into legitimate business, didn't realize what he was signing up for. When he tried to leave, they beat him so bad he never recovered. Died 6 months later. His hands clenched into fists. So yeah, I'll help you. What do you need? Maintenance uniforms, access to the service elevator, and a distraction on the 4th floor so we can get into Hale's office without the guards noticing. When? Monday morning. Early, before the business day starts. James thought about it, then nodded. I can do that. There's a gas leak I've been meaning to report on the 3rd floor. Nothing dangerous, but it'll require immediate attention. Guards will have to evacuate that floor, check the lines. Should give you maybe 15 minutes. That's all we need. They spent the rest of Saturday planning. James sketched the building's layout from memory, where the guards stood, which offices were occupied, the safest routes to take. Anne practiced with her lockpicks on James's door until she could open it in under 30 seconds. Silas remained quiet, watching, absorbing. That night, back at the boarding house, Evelyn found him sitting by the window, cleaning his revolver. You're worried, she said. Always am before something like this. Something like what? A plan that depends on everything going right. He slid a bullet into the cylinder, spun it. I prefer plans that assume everything will go wrong. This one does. That's why we have you. He glanced up at her. I'm the contingency plan? You're the part where, if things fall apart, someone who knows how to fight gets us out alive. That's a lot of faith to put in one person. I know. Evelyn sat beside him. But I've watched you shoot. I've seen how you move in a fight. If anyone can keep us alive through this, it's you. Silas was quiet for a moment. Then, why are you really doing this? And don't tell me it's just about the ledger. What do you mean? I mean you could disappear, change your name, move west where Hale can't reach you. Your sisters are safe in the mountains. You could walk away. Evelyn looked out the window at the city lights. I've been running my whole life. Not just from Hale, from everything. People's judgment, their expectations, their assumptions about who I'm supposed to be. She touched the glass, felt the cold seep through. I'm tired of running, tired of being afraid. If I'm going to die, I want it to be while fighting back, not while hiding. That's not a guarantee you'll win. No, but it's a guarantee I'll know I tried. Sunday passed in a blur of final preparations. They tested the uniforms James provided, made sure they fit well enough to pass casual inspection. Anne went over the plan until she could recite it backwards. Evelyn wrote a letter to her sisters, just in case, and sealed it with instructions for Mrs. Chen to mail if they didn't return. That night, sleep was impossible. Evelyn lay awake listening to the city, to the distant sound of trains and the closer sound of drunks fighting in the street below. Beside her, Anne tossed and turned, equally restless. Evelyn? Anne's voice was small in the darkness. Yeah? If this goes wrong, if Hale catches us, it won't. But if it does, I just want you to know I'm not scared. Well, I am scared, but I'm also proud of what we've done, how far we've come. Anne rolled over to face her. Father would be proud too. Father got us into this mess. True, but he also taught us to be strong, to not give up. Anne reached out, found Evelyn's hand in the dark. We're going to win tomorrow. I can feel it. Evelyn wished she had her sister's certainty. All she felt was the weight of responsibility and the cold knowledge that one mistake would cost them everything. Monday morning came gray and cold. They dressed in the maintenance uniforms, rough fabric that smelled of lye and old sweat. James met them 2 blocks from the Harrison building, his face drawn. Gas leak's been reported. Guards should be occupied with the evacuation around 8:30. He handed Evelyn a key. This opens the service elevator, 4th floor, turn left. Hale's office is 3rd door on the right. You'll know it by the fancy woodwork. Thank you, Evelyn said, for everything. Don't thank me. Just make sure whatever you find in there gets seen by the right people. James's eyes were hard. Make him pay for what he's done. They entered through the service entrance at 8:15. A guard glanced at them, saw the uniforms, waved them through without really looking. The service elevator was cramped and slow, cables groaning as it climbed. At 8:27, an alarm sounded on the 3rd floor. Shouting, running footsteps. The evacuation was starting. They reached the 4th floor at 8:30. The hallway was empty, the guards gone to deal with the gas leak situation. Evelyn's heart was trying to punch through her ribs. 3rd door, she whispered. They moved quickly, quietly. The office door was solid oak with Victor Hale's name in gold lettering. Anne knelt with her picks while Silas and Evelyn kept watch. 30 seconds. The lock clicked. Inside the office was everything Evelyn expected: expensive furniture, thick carpet, floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the river. A massive desk dominated the space, and behind it, exactly where Decker said it would be, hung a painting of some long-dead president. Evelyn moved to it, lifted it off the wall. The safe was small, built into the wall, combination lock gleaming. "Can you open it?" Silas asked Anne. "I can try." Anne pressed her ear to the safe, began turning the dial slowly. Her fingers were steady, her breathing controlled. Minutes passed. Evelyn watched the door, listening for approaching footsteps. The building was too quiet. Wrong quiet. "Come on," she muttered. "Almost there." Anne's brow furrowed in concentration. "Just need there." The safe opened. Inside were stacks of papers, some cash, and one leather-bound ledger. Evelyn pulled it out, flipped it open. Page after page of names, dates, amounts, judges who'd thrown cases, police who'd looked the other way, politicians who'd voted how Hale wanted, all of it documented in neat handwriting. "We've got it," she breathed. "Then let's move," Silas said. They made it to the hallway before the footsteps started. Heavy boots, multiple sets, coming from both directions. "Trap," Silas said flatly. The gas leak was too convenient. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Hale knew we were coming. Probably had people watching Martha, watching James. Silas pulled his revolver. "Back into the office, now." They retreated, Silas slamming the door and shoving Hale's heavy desk against it. It wouldn't hold long, but it didn't need to. "Window," Anne said, already moving. Evelyn looked out. 4 stories up, straight drop to the street below. But there was a ledge, maybe 18 inches wide, running along the building's exterior. "You're joking. You got a better idea?" The door shuddered under heavy blows, men shouting, wood starting to splinter. Silas was already opening the window. "Ledge runs to the corner of the building. From there, there's a fire escape. We can climb down." "That's insane." "So's staying here." He climbed out first, tested the ledge. "It'll hold, but move slow. Don't look down." Anne went next, her small frame making the traverse easier. Evelyn looked at the ledger in her hands, then stuffed it inside her shirt and climbed out. The wind hit her immediately, cold and vicious. The ledge was narrower than it looked from inside, barely wide enough for her feet. She pressed herself against the building, inched sideways. Behind her, the office door burst open, shouting, then gunfire. Bullets punched through the window, spraying glass. Evelyn flinched, nearly lost her footing. Silas grabbed her arm, steadied her. "Don't stop. Keep moving." They made it to the corner. The fire escape was there, rusted but solid. Anne scrambled down first, her movements quick and sure. Evelyn followed, her hand shaking so badly she could barely grip the rungs. More gunfire. A bullet sparked off the metal railing inches from her head. "Faster!" Silas shouted from above. They hit the ground running. The street was crowded with morning workers, people on their way to factories and shops. Evelyn shoved through them, the ledger pressed against her chest, Hale's men somewhere behind them. "This way!" Anne ducked into an alley, then another, zigzagging through the city's back passages. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of pursuit faded. Finally gasping, they stopped in a narrow space between two warehouses. Evelyn doubled over, trying to breathe. "We did it," she managed. "We actually got it." "Now we need to use it," Silas said, "before Hale figures out where we're going next." "The newspaper," Evelyn said. "The Philadelphia Inquirer. My father knew the editor, Samuel Grayson. He ran stories about corruption before, things that made powerful people angry. If anyone will publish this, it's him." They made their way to the Inquirer building, a 5-story structure that smelled of ink and paper. The receptionist tried to stop them, but Evelyn pushed past. "I need to see Samuel Grayson. Now. You can't just—" "Tell him it's about Victor Hale. Tell him I have proof of everything." The receptionist's eyes went wide. She hurried off, returned a minute later with a heavy-set man in shirt sleeves, ink stains on his fingers. "You're Evelyn Hart," Grayson said. "Not a question." "Yes, there's a $1,000 reward for you." "I know, but I'm betting what I have is worth more than $1,000 to you." She pulled out the ledger, set it on his desk. Grayson opened it, his eyes scanning the pages. His expression changed, shock, then anger, then something like hunger. "Where did you get this?" "Hale's office, this morning. He'll kill you for this." "He's going to kill me anyway. At least this way I take him with me." Evelyn leaned forward. "You print this. Every name, every payment, every crime, and Hale's protection disappears. His allies will turn on him to save themselves. He becomes just another criminal the law can actually touch." Grayson was quiet, torn between journalistic integrity and self-preservation. Finally, "This will start a war. Half the city's power structure is in here." "Good, let them burn. You understand what you're asking? Publishing this doesn't just expose Hale. It exposes everyone connected to him. Judges, politicians, police, they'll all fight back." "Then let them fight. At least it'll be in the open instead of in shadows." Grayson looked at her for a long moment. Then he picked up the ledger, called for his senior editor. "Start setting type. Front page, full spread, every detail." He looked at Evelyn. "You should leave the city. Once this hits the streets, there won't be anywhere safe for you here." "I'm not leaving until I see it in print. That's tomorrow morning at the earliest." "Then I'll wait." They spent the night in the Inquirer building, watching typesetters work, watching the story come together. Silas stood guard at the door, his revolver ready. Anne paced, too nervous to sit still. Around midnight, someone tried to break in. Silas fired a warning shot and they retreated. An hour later, someone else tried the back entrance. The night editor had a shotgun, used it to encourage them to leave. "Hale knows," Evelyn said. "Someone told him where we are." "Doesn't matter," Grayson replied, not looking up from his editing. "This goes to print in 4 hours. After that, it's too late to stop it." Those 4 hours felt like days. Evelyn watched the sky lighten, watched the city wake up. At 5:30, the printing presses started, their thunder shaking the building. At 6, the first papers hit the streets. The headline was simple, devastating. "Victor Hale's Empire of Corruption, the complete ledger." Beneath it, names, dozens of them, hundreds, each one connected to a payment, a favor, a crime. The evidence laid bare for everyone to see. Evelyn watched from the window as newsboys shouted the headlines, as people stopped to read, as shock and anger spread through the crowd like wildfire. "It's done," she said quietly. "Not quite," Silas said. He was looking down the street where 3 black carriages had pulled up, men in expensive suits emerging, their faces hard. "Hale's coming." "Let him come." Evelyn checked her rifle. "He can't stop this now." But Hale wasn't trying to stop the story. He was trying to stop her. The men forced their way into the building. Gunfire erupted in the lobby. The night editor's shotgun, the crack of revolvers. Silas positioned himself at the top of the stairs, Anne beside him. "Get Evelyn out the back," he told Anne. "I'm not leaving you." "You're not staying." He shoved her toward Evelyn. "This is over. The story's out. Now you need to survive long enough to see what happens next." More gunfire. Footsteps on the stairs. Silas fired twice, heard someone cry out. Then he was backing up, reloading, firing again. Evelyn grabbed Anne's arm, pulled her toward the back stairs. Behind them, Silas was holding the line, buying them time with every bullet. They burst out into the alley. A carriage was waiting, Martha Keene at the reins, her face pale but determined. "Get in!" They climbed aboard. Martha whipped the horses, and they lurched forward. Behind them, the Enquirer building erupted in chaos. More gunfire, shouting, the sound of breaking glass. Silas? Evelyn started to turn back. He told me to get you out, Martha said. So that's what I'm doing. They raced through the city streets, away from the Enquirer, away from Hale's men. Evelyn watched the building shrink behind them, her heart in her throat. She'd gotten the ledger, she'd exposed Hale. But the cost? He'll be all right, Anne said, but her voice shook. He's smart. He knows how to fight. Evelyn wanted to believe it. She desperately wanted to believe it. Martha drove them to the train station, pressed money into Evelyn's hand. This is everything I have. Get on a train, go west. Don't stop until you're back in those mountains. What about Silas? I'll find out what happened. I'll get word to you if I can. Martha's eyes were fierce. But right now you need to disappear. The ledger's out, but Hale still has men, still has reach. You're not safe until you're gone. They bought tickets with Martha's money, climbed aboard a westbound train. As it pulled out of the station, Evelyn looked back at Philadelphia, the city where she'd been born, where her father had died, where she'd learned what it meant to truly fight. She didn't know if she'd ever see it again. Beside her, Anne was crying silently. Evelyn put an arm around her sister, held her close. The train gathered speed, carrying them away from everything they'd fought for, away from the man who'd helped them survive. Outside the window, the city gave way to countryside, and somewhere in that distance, Victor Hale's empire was beginning to crumble. The train crawled west for 3 days, stopping at every small town between Philadelphia and the territories. Evelyn barely slept, her mind cycling through the same questions. Was Silas alive? Had Hale's men caught him? Was he bleeding out in some alley while she ran away? Anne didn't ask these questions aloud, but Evelyn saw them in her sister's eyes every time their gazes met. They bought newspapers at every stop, scanning for news. The second day brought the first reports: chaos in Philadelphia, arrests of prominent officials, judges fleeing the city. Victor Hale's name appeared in every article, but always carefully, always with lawyers' language protecting the paper from lawsuits. The third day's paper was different. Evelyn. Anne's voice was tight. She held the newspaper with shaking hands, pointed to a headline buried on page 3. Shootout at Enquirer building leaves 3 dead, 2 wounded. Evelyn's heart stopped. She grabbed the paper, read frantically. The details were sparse: gunfire, casualties, police arriving too late. No names of the dead, no mention of survivors. It doesn't say it was him, Anne said. It could have been Hale's men who died. It could have been, but probably wasn't. Evelyn knew the odds of walking into a building full of armed men and walking back out. She'd known them when she watched Silas take his position at the top of those stairs. She folded the paper carefully, tucked it into her bag. Whatever had happened, she couldn't change it from a train heading west. All she could do was keep moving, get back to the mountains, make sure his sacrifice, if that's what it was, hadn't been for nothing. They reached the mountain town 4 days after leaving Philadelphia. The same town where Evelyn had first arrived, a lifetime ago, expecting nothing but survival and finding something far more complicated. Morrison was waiting at the station, his face grim. He'd received Martha's telegram, knew they were coming. "Your sisters are safe," he said before Evelyn could ask. "Boone's had them at the cabin, locked down tight. No trouble since you left." "And Silas?" Morrison's expression told her everything before he spoke. "No word. Martha sent one more telegram 2 days ago, said there was a lot of confusion, a lot of bodies. She was trying to find out more, but..." He trailed off. But Philadelphia's in chaos right now. Half the government's under investigation, the other half's trying to cover their tracks. Finding one man in all that mess, especially if he doesn't want to be found, that's near impossible. Evelyn felt something crack inside her chest. She'd prepared herself for his death, had braced for that news. But the not knowing was somehow worse. The possibility that he was out there, hurt, needing help she couldn't provide. "Take us to the cabin," she said quietly. The reunion with Clara and Margaret was tearful and chaotic. Clara sobbed into Evelyn's shoulder for a solid 10 minutes. Margaret held Anne like she'd never let go. Boone stood awkwardly to the side, rifle in hand, looking older than he had 2 weeks ago. "Any trouble?" Evelyn asked when the crying had subsided. "Some. 3 men came sniffing around 4 days back. We convinced them to leave. Boone's smile was grim. Permanently. Bodies? Buried where nobody'll find them. Evelyn should have felt something about that. Horror, maybe, or guilt. But she felt nothing except a tired sort of gratitude. Boone and his brothers had protected her sisters. That was all that mattered. Hale's operation is collapsing, she told them, laying out the newspapers she'd collected. The ledger exposed everyone he had in his pocket. They're turning on each other, trying to save themselves. It's going to take months to sort out, but Hale's finished. And what about you? Margaret asked. Are you finished too? I don't know. That night, Evelyn stood on the ridge where she'd first watched the supply wagon arrive, back when her biggest worry was whether the Vance brothers would accept 4 sisters pretending to be what they weren't. The mountains looked the same, cold, indifferent, eternal. But she was different, changed in ways she was still trying to understand. She'd killed men. She'd stolen from one of the most powerful criminals in the East. She'd exposed corruption that would reshape an entire city. And somewhere in all that, she'd lost someone who'd become, what? A friend? An ally? Something more that she'd never had the chance to name? You're thinking too hard. Boone's voice came from behind her. He'd moved quietly, but not quietly enough that she hadn't heard him. Seems like I should be thinking hard right now. Thinking's fine. Torturing yourself isn't. He stood beside her, looking out at the same mountains. Silas knew what he was doing, knew the risks. He made his choice. I made it for him. I dragged him into this. No. He chose to come. Could have said no. Could have sent you alone. He didn't. Why didn't he? Boone was quiet for a moment. You'd have to ask him that. But if I had to guess, I'd say it's because he saw something in you worth protecting. Not because you're weak. Opposite of that. Because you're strong enough to do what needs doing. And that's a rare thing. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm falling apart. Yeah, well, that's what strength looks like sometimes. Holding yourself together when everything's trying to tear you apart. They stood in silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. Evelyn wanted to believe Silas was alive somewhere, that the chaos in Philadelphia had somehow protected him, instead of consuming him. But belief required hope, and hope felt dangerous right now. The next 2 weeks crawled by. Evelyn threw herself into work, repairing the cabin, helping with the horses, training with the rifle until her shoulder was permanently bruised. Anything to keep from thinking, from hoping, from breaking. News from Philadelphia trickled in through Morrison. Hale had been arrested, though his lawyers were already working to get him released. The mayor had resigned. 3 judges were facing corruption charges. The police commissioner had fled to Canada. The whole city was tearing itself apart, exposing decades of rot in a matter of days. But nothing about Silas. Evelyn stopped reading the newspapers, stopped asking Morrison for updates. It was easier to accept that he was gone than to keep hoping for news that never came. Then, on a gray morning 3 weeks after their return, Clara came running from the cabin, shouting, "Evelyn, someone's coming!" Evelyn grabbed her rifle, her heart suddenly hammering. Boone and Ryder were already moving, taking defensive positions. Whatever was coming, they'd face it together. But it wasn't Hale's men who emerged from the tree line. It was a single rider on an exhausted horse, moving slowly, clearly in pain. The figure was wrapped in a heavy coat, hat pulled low, but something about the way he sat in the saddle was familiar. Evelyn's rifle lowered. She started walking, then running, her feet slipping on ice and not caring. Silas looked like hell. His face was pale, bruised, a fresh scar cutting across his left cheekbone. His left arm was in a makeshift sling. But he was alive, and when he saw Evelyn running toward him, something like relief crossed his face. He dismounted carefully, wincing with every movement. Evelyn reached him, stopped just short of throwing her arms around him because she didn't know what was injured and what wasn't. "You're alive," she said. Stupid thing to say, but the only words that would come. Mostly. His voice was rougher than she remembered. Got shot twice, stabbed once, fell down a flight of stairs. But I'm here. You should have sent word. Was a little busy trying not to die. He smiled, and it was like sunlight breaking through clouds. Besides, figured you'd rather see me in person than get a telegram. Evelyn's hands were shaking. You're an idiot. Yeah, you could have been killed. Nearly was, several times. And you just showed up here like it's nothing? It's not nothing. It's everything. Silas reached out with his good hand, cupped her face. I told you I'd watch your back. I keep my promises. She kissed him. Didn't plan to, didn't think about it, just did it. He made a surprised sound against her mouth, then kissed her back like a man who'd thought he'd never get the chance. When they broke apart, Boone was grinning. About damn time. Over the next few days, Silas recovered slowly. The bullet wounds were mostly healed, the stab wound less so. The stairs had cracked 2 ribs and given him a concussion that still made him dizzy if he moved too fast. But he was alive, and that was more than Evelyn had dared to hope for. He told them the story in pieces, between bouts of sleep and Evelyn's insistence that he rest. After they'd left the Enquirer building, he'd held off Hale's men long enough for the police to arrive. But the police were split, some loyal to Hale, some finally willing to stand against him. The resulting shootout had been chaos. Silas had taken a bullet in the shoulder, another in the leg. He'd managed to escape in the confusion, made it to Martha Keene's office. She'd hidden him, tended his wounds, kept him safe while the city tore itself apart. Why didn't you send word? Evelyn asked for the 3rd time. But to him, 'Cause I didn't know who to trust. Hale still had people everywhere, and I didn't want to risk a message being intercepted. Silas shifted on the bed, trying to find a position that didn't hurt. Once things settled enough that I could move, I got on a horse and headed west. Figured it was safer to just show up. 3 weeks. You let me think you were dead for 3 weeks. I know. I'm sorry. Evelyn wanted to stay angry, but she couldn't. He was here. He was alive. That was all that mattered. News continued to filter in from Philadelphia. Hale's trial was set for spring, his empire dismantled piece by piece. The men he'd bought were either in jail or had fled. The corruption that had rotted the city for decades was finally being exposed to daylight. But the cost had been high. 15 people dead in the riots following the Ledger's publication. Dozens more injured. The city would take years to recover, if it ever fully did. Was it worth it? Clara asked one night, her voice small. All those people who died, all the chaos, was it worth it? Evelyn didn't have a good answer. She'd started this to save her sisters, to stop running, to fight back. But the consequences had spread far beyond what she'd imagined. I don't know, she said honestly. I think maybe worth is the wrong question. Maybe the right question is whether it was necessary. And was it? Yes, because Hale wouldn't have stopped. He would have kept hurting people, kept buying officials, kept rotting everything he touched. Someone had to stop him. And that someone had to be you? I don't know if it had to be, but it was. Margaret spoke up from the corner. I think it was brave. Stupid maybe, but brave. Can it be both? Anne added. Usually is, Silas said from the doorway. He'd been moving around more, his strength slowly returning. Bravery without stupidity is just calculation. Winter deepened, locking the mountains in snow and ice. The cabin that had once felt like a temporary shelter became something else. Home, maybe, or close enough. The sisters settled into routines, learned the rhythms of mountain life. Clara's hands stopped shaking when she held a rifle. Margaret became an excellent shot. Anne learned to track game through the snow. And Evelyn learned something harder. How to let people in. How to trust that staying in one place didn't mean becoming trapped. She and Silas were careful around each other at first, both uncertain how to navigate what they'd started. But slowly, in quiet moments, something grew. Not the dramatic romance from stories, but something steadier. Partnership built on shared danger and mutual respect. One night, lying beside him in the loft while snow fell outside, Evelyn asked the question that had been nagging her. Why did you really come to Philadelphia with me? Silas was quiet for a long moment. Because I'd spent my whole life in these mountains, doing what needed doing, surviving. And then you showed up, this woman who'd been judged her whole life for things that didn't matter, who decided to stop accepting other people's definitions. He turned to look at her. You reminded me that surviving isn't the same as living. That's a lot of weight to put on one person. Probably. But you carried it anyway. I had help. Yeah, you did. Spring came slowly to the mountains, snow melting to reveal frozen ground that would take weeks to thaw. News from Philadelphia arrived less frequently, but what came was good. Hale had been convicted, sentenced to 20 years. His organization had collapsed entirely. The city was cleaning house, electing new officials, trying to rebuild what corruption had destroyed. Martha Keene sent a letter in March. She'd been called to testify at the trial, had used the opportunity to tell the world exactly what Victor Hale had done to the Hart family and hundreds of others. The public outcry had been enormous. "You changed things," Martha wrote. "Not just for yourself, but for everyone Hale hurt. The city's different now. Not perfect, never perfect, but better. That's what you gave us." Evelyn read the letter 3 times, trying to make herself believe it. She'd spent so long running, fighting, surviving, that the idea of having actually won felt foreign. "You did it," Clara said, reading over her shoulder. "You stopped him." "We did it? All of us." "No." Clara's voice was firm. "You led us. You made the hard choices. We just followed." "Following is brave too." "Maybe. But you're the one who decided we'd stop running." That was the hard part. That evening, Silas found Evelyn on the ridge where they'd first talked about strength and survival and what it meant to really fight. "Thinking about going back?" he asked. "No, Philadelphia's not home anymore. I'm not sure it ever really was." She looked out at the mountains, at the vast expanse of stone and snow and sky. "This place, though, it's starting to feel like something." "Like what?" "Like where I'm supposed to be." Silas stood beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "You know you don't have to decide right now. We've got time." "Do we?" "Hale's gone, but that doesn't mean we're safe forever. There could be others, other dangers." "There's always dangers. That's not unique to here or to you." He turned to face her. "But you're not the same person who showed up in that wagon 4 months ago. You're stronger now. All of you are." "Strong enough? I don't know if anyone's ever strong enough. But you're strong enough to keep going, keep fighting when you need to. That's all strength really is. The ability to take the next step even when you don't know where it leads." Evelyn thought about that. Thought about all the steps she'd taken, leaving Philadelphia, lying to the Vance brothers, learning to shoot, attacking Decker's camp, stealing the ledger, running. Each step had led to the next, had built something she couldn't have imagined at the start. "I killed people," she said quietly. "I destroyed lives, caused chaos. I don't know how to reconcile that with who I thought I was." "Who did you think you were?" "Someone good, someone who helped people." "You did help people. Everyone, Hale, would have kept hurting. You helped them." Silas's voice was gentle but firm. "The world's not simple. Good people sometimes have to do hard things. That doesn't make you bad. It makes you human." "I don't feel human. I feel like I'm made of scar tissue and anger." "Then you're the toughest human I've ever met." He smiled slightly. "Besides, scar tissue is stronger than regular skin. You know that, right? Where you've been broken and healed, that's the strongest part." Evelyn looked down at her hands. They were different than they'd been in Philadelphia. Calloused, scarred, capable. Hands that could shoot, could fight, could survive. But also hands that could comfort her sisters, could build instead of just destroy. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Whatever we want. That's the whole point of being free." Freedom. The word felt strange. For so long, every decision had been dictated by fear, by necessity, by the need to survive one more day. But now, with Hale imprisoned and spring coming and the mountains stretching endlessly around them, there was space to breathe, space to choose. "I think I want to stay," Evelyn said. "Here in the mountains. Build something permanent instead of just surviving." "Yeah? Yeah, if that's all right with you." Silas pulled her close, careful of his still healing ribs. "More than all right. This place needs people like you, people who don't quit, who stand their ground." They stood together as the sun set behind the western peaks, painting everything gold and red and purple. The wind carried the smell of pine and snowmelt and the promise of summer. Below in the cabin, her sisters were laughing about something. Boone and Ryder were arguing good-naturedly. Elias was probably reading one of the books he hoarded like treasure. This was her family now, not the one she'd been born into, but the one she'd fought for, bled for, nearly died for. And that made it real in a way blood never could. The next few months brought changes. They expanded the cabin, added rooms for everyone. Boone started courting Margaret, his awkwardness somehow charming. Ryder taught Clara how to handle the horses, discovered she had a gift for it. Elias and Anne spent hours discussing books, ideas. the kind of deep conversations that made everyone else's eyes glaze over. And Evelyn learned to live with what she'd done. The nightmares came less frequently. The guilt became something she could carry instead of something that crushed her. She'd never forget the men she'd killed, the chaos she'd caused, but she also wouldn't let it define her. Because the truth was, she'd done what she had to do. Not perfectly, not without cost, but she'd done it. She'd protected her sisters, stopped a monster, exposed corruption that would have kept festering if someone hadn't cut it out. Some people would call that heroic. Evelyn just called it necessary. One evening in late summer, nearly a year after they'd first arrived, Evelyn stood in the clearing where Silas had first taught her to shoot. The bottles were gone now, replaced by targets she'd painted herself, circles within circles, challenging but achievable. She raised the rifle, sighted down the barrel, breathed out slowly. The shot echoed across the valley, and the center of the target disintegrated. Behind her, Silas whistled appreciatively. "You've gotten better. Had a good teacher. Had a good student." He moved to stand beside her. "You know, when you first showed up, I thought you'd last maybe a month up here. City woman, used to comfort, not exactly built for mountain life. That's because you were judging me by the wrong standards." "I know, figured that out pretty quick." He smiled. "You want to know what I think now?" "What?" "I think you're exactly where you're supposed to be. Not because the mountains changed you, but because you were always this strong. You just needed a place where that strength mattered more than what you looked like, or who your father was, or any of that other nonsense." Evelyn set the rifle down, turned to face him. "I used to hate my body. Spent years wishing I was smaller, prettier, more like what people expected. And then I got here and suddenly none of that mattered. Size meant strength. Curves meant I could handle work. All the things I'd been taught were flaws became advantages. They were always advantages. You just couldn't see it in a world that valued the wrong things. Maybe. Or maybe I needed to be somewhere that valued the right things." Silas reached out, took her hand. "Either way, I'm glad you're here." "Me too." They walked back to the cabin together as the sun set and the stars emerged. Inside, dinner was waiting, her sisters chatting and laughing, Boone and Ryder arguing about nothing important, Elias reading at the table despite Margaret telling him it was rude. This was home. This was family. This was the life Evelyn had fought for, bled for, nearly died for. And it was worth every scar, every nightmare, every hard choice, because she'd learned something in these mountains, something that changed everything. Strength wasn't about being perfect or fitting into someone else's definition of what you should be. Strength was about standing your ground when the world told you to step aside. It was about protecting what mattered, fighting when you had to, and refusing to break no matter how much pressure got applied. The world had tried to break Evelyn Hart, had tried to make her small, invisible, ashamed, but Evelyn had learned to take up space, to be loud when necessary, fierce when required, unapologetic about existing in a body that didn't fit conventional standards. She'd learned that survival wasn't enough. You had to live, had to choose every day to keep going, keep fighting, keep existing despite everything trying to grind you down. And she'd learned that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is ask for help. Let people in. Trust that you don't have to carry everything alone. That night, lying in bed with Silas beside her and her sisters safe in the next room, Evelyn thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, scared, desperate, running from a threat she didn't know how to face. She wasn't that woman anymore. She was someone who'd faced the threat head-on and won. Someone who'd learned that being underestimated was an advantage if you knew how to use it. Someone who'd discovered that the body she'd spent years hating was actually perfect, not because it fit some arbitrary standard, but because it was hers, and it was strong, and it had carried her through hell and out the other side. Victor Hale had tried to own her, tried to reduce her to property he could buy and sell, but Evelyn Hart had taught him something. Some women don't break. Some women fight back. And when they do, empires fall. The mountains stood silent outside, eternal and indifferent. They didn't care about her story, didn't care whether she succeeded or failed. They would be here long after she was gone, unchanged by human drama. But that was okay, because Evelyn had never needed the mountains to care. She just needed them to be there, solid, unmovable, a place where strength mattered more than appearance, where survival was earned through grit instead of given based on genetics. She'd found her place. Not because it was easy, but because it was real. And in a world that had tried so hard to make her feel like she didn't belong anywhere, finding a place that felt like home was everything. Evelyn closed her eyes, listened to the mountain wind, and finally, truly rested. Because she was done running, done apologizing, done being anything other than exactly who she was. And that woman, scarred, strong, unapologetically herself, was more than enough. She was everything.